Texas, strong, independent, powerful, until one storm made it powerless.
We've been like this for over 5 days going on now.
Paralyzing the state.
This is all I got.
I can't even put it into words.
Now,
It has truly affected my family a lot.
where do we go from here?
We know we have to change.
I think it is so important to reestablish confidence for consumers.
Has the Lone Star State learned its lesson?
The rest of the world is watching every move we make.
Will our electric grid hold up?
Reliability remains a serious long-term concern.
Plus, what can the future look like?
This project is designed to take power, into or out of the state of Texas.
In our homes, on our roads, and in our community.
Everything's bigger in Texas, right?
For the next hour, we're going to be talking about energizing Texas, from the largest urban solar farm being built in Houston to a road trip in an electric car.
But we are going to start with the power grid. That winter storm showed Texans how vulnerable we are. It's got problems politicians made efforts to fix. But is it enough?
If there's a starting point for the future of Texas power, it came at the state capitol on a Tuesday in June. With the stroke of a pen and a proud declaration, power grid reform is now law.
Everything that needed to be done was done to fix the power grid in Texas.
Less than a week later, the state's grid manager, ERCOT, was asking Texans to conserve electricity, concerned there wouldn't be enough to go around.
If they're warning us in June, after the legislature just met, I don't know how the public would have confidence in us. I do not have complete confidence.
That is where Texas stands, restoring grid reliability and regaining the public's trust.
Going forward,
Democrat State Senator John Whitmire says it's all taking too long.
it's got to be an urgent matter. And it's not, as I talk to you today.
Take winterization we've heard so much about. The new state laws do require it, but for power plants, the rules on how to winterize equipment won't be written till December. For critical natural gas facilities, they won't come till March 2023.
Is everything happening fast enough for you?
Yesterday would have been better, right?
At the time of crisis,
State Senator Charles Schwertner is a Republican who authored the weatherization bill.
It's not going to happen overnight. You're right about that. But we are well on our way to addressing the concerns that Texans had and the failures, really, that we saw here in Texas.
So while we all wait for change, ERCOT still has to keep the lights on every single day. And that involves a daunting balancing act. How do you match power supply with demand? The state's top utility regulator likened it to jumping out of a plane.
Every morning we're skydiving, and you only get one chance for it to go wrong.
You don't run a multi-billion-dollar process day by day by skydiving, not knowing if your parachute's going to open.
Ed Hers is a University of Houston Energy Fellow and KHOU's energy expert.
This is not the way a grid is supposed to be managed.
The problem, says Hers, lies in the very way the ERCOT market's designed. Power generators generally get paid only for the electricity they produce, not to be on standby or ready to produce.
The analogy I use is that of the Astros. In an electricity-only market, only those 10 guys taking the field tonight are going to get paid. The guys on the bench, they don't get a check.
The players, or power generators, bid to sell their electricity on the ERCOT grid. That competition often means low prices, but low revenues too.
For 8 of the last 10 years, in the ERCOT market, the Independent Market Monitors Report, so that's the referee, the scorekeeper, has pointed out that revenues have not covered cost. So if revenues don't cover cost, they're not being paid to reinvest. Reinvesting would mean keeping the equipment ready to go.
The ERCOT market hinges on what's known as scarcity pricing. Energy prices shoot up when power becomes scarce and reserves run low, sometimes dangerously low, like during extreme weather. The head of the Public Utilities Commission called it a crisis-based business model.
A crisis-based business model doesn't sound too comforting when you're in the business of reliability.
It's not, and that's why we've got to get away from it.
Chairman Peter Lake was appointed in April.
Private companies can only generate revenue as Texas gets closer and closer to the edge. And that's, as you said, that is not a good way to run a reliable grid.
And so Chairman Lake is pledging to redesign the entire market from scratch, an overhaul to pay companies for reliable and consistent power, not just in crisis mode. What that will look like, just like with the other reforms, will take time. We won't know till the end of the year.
Still to come, Energizing Texas on wind and solar. How batteries could help make renewable energy more reliable. But first,
Here in East Texas, there are billion-dollar plans to build a bridge of sorts to get off of ERCOT's so-called electricity island. Where will it connect, and what does that mean for the future of the Texas power grid? We'll take a look.
Texas lives up to its name, the Lone Star State. Well, it is a loner when it comes to power. Our grid doesn't connect to other grids, but there is a project that would make a connection.
The main thing that makes Texas unique is that we're not connected to the rest of the United States.
Texas was allowed to maintain its own operating grid.
Texas never worked to intermingle with surrounding states.
Sort of an electrical island.
Here in the piney woods of East Texas, big plans are rolling along to build a $2 billion bridge of sorts. Not to cross water, but to connect the Lone Star State to another electricity grid. It's about a 3-hour drive from Houston.
Order up.
Folks here in Henderson, just like Houstonians, have the power failures of February seared into their memory.
It was rough.
Cliff Wilson is a native.
How long was power out?
A couple weeks. Most people were out for a little bit longer than that.
It's why Wilson welcomes the idea of reaching out for help in times of need.
Y'all need to get this line through here to make sure we don't lose power again during a snow apocalypse. Bring it on.
But just as the burgers at this popular lunch spot are made only with Texas-raised beef,
I'd rather keep it in Texas and fix what we have.
Some, like Paul Rack, prefer to keep it local.
Just having our independence in that way is a big identity for Texas.
Texas energy independence. It dates way back to the days of FDR.
I want to tell you,
Congress passed a law to regulate interstate electricity, but Texas utilities chose to keep power within state lines and go it alone. It shaped the nation's power grid system as it looks today. The western and eastern grids are regulated by the feds, but the ERCOT-managed Texas grid is not. It's like an electrical island. Except for a few limited connections, it's largely isolated from neighbors and outside help, even in times of trouble like the winter storm.
This is our Patterns Operation Control Center.
Enter Pattern Energy. The private renewable energy company has spent a decade working to build that bridge off the island.
This project is designed to take power, into or out of the state of Texas.
It's a 2-gigawatt transmission line called Southern Cross that will connect Texas to the southeast, and it will do so
without jeopardizing the independence of ERCOT.
Attorney and pattern lobbyist Michael Jewell.
Congress has set a very narrow path of roadmap for how you can do an interconnection between ERCOT and a non-ERCOT region. Pattern and Southern Cross were able to thread the needle of the federal requirements in order to get that order.
The federal order gives Pattern Energy clearance to build a 400-mile high-voltage direct current line. And Texans should know
we'll fund it. We're not looking to the ratepayers of Texas to pay for the cost.
Instead, Pattern's Kerry Kotler says it will work kind of like a toll road. Texas power generators can pay to move and sell power out of ERCOT, and when the ERCOT grid is in a bind,
this transmission line can help to keep the lights on by sending the power in times of need.
While 2 gigawatts would not have solved the massive failures of the February storm, it could have powered a few 100,000 homes and bought the Texas grid some breathing room.
You know, it's hard to just say there's one single thing that's going to solve this, but Southern Cross, this transmission project, can be one of the key things that can help to solve this. So we can't just continue the status quo.
For as long as it's taken to get to this point, the finished Southern Cross project, we're told, is still about 5 years away. Pattern Energy hopes to break ground in 2 years, then construction will take another 3 before the bridge off ERCOT's Electricity Island is open for business.
What's it like to drive an electric car? We take to the Texas highway to find out.
Do you think we can make it all the way around Houston?
I believe we can at 83%
Let's
with
try.
the air condition on high.
Because we picked the hottest day to do this.
Plus, a different kind of road trip.
Here in South Texas, there's a growing problem with the state's power grid. Electricity produced at wind farms like these at times cannot get to your home. The story of congestion on the state's electricity highway coming up.
If you've taken a road trip in Texas, you might have noticed them. Massive wind turbines producing energy. But the power from the farms don't always make it to your home.
Grid congestion is now a statewide issue.
The current Texas power grid cannot keep pace.
We have generation, but we can't get it to the home.
So sometimes it has to be wasted.
It's very frustrating.
In the Panhandle, West Texas, and here in the Rio Grande Valley, towering wind turbines have sprouted up everywhere, making Texas the #1 wind power producing state. But it's not just getting produced.
Do you think average Texans know this is going on?
I don't think so.
It's getting wasted too, says Jenny Fink with EDF Renewables.
And it's really frustrating to see that we have the capability to produce more power than we're actually able to get to the people who need it.
They cannot get it to where it needs to go. This EDF wind farm can generate power for 77,000 Texas homes. But on these nearby power lines, there's often a roadblock to get it all there. Think of transmission lines as electricity highways that can safely handle only so many cars. When they get congested with power generators trying to get on, the grid manager ERCOT, much like a traffic cop, limits or constrains the amount of traffic flowing on the road.
And if there isn't that highway space available for us to move the energy effectively and efficiently, then we actually have to tell the turbines to stop generating.
And so what you're telling me is you can have a pretty windy day, but look up here a couple hundred feet and those things won't be spinning.
Yeah, and those are really frustrating days.
That frustration, EDF says, happened in the winter storm.
We have no heat, no power at our house.
Never been through anything like this before.
While millions of Texans were left in the dark, the company's South Texas wind farm was able to produce power. But as it told state lawmakers,
additional megawatts of generation were available, but could not be delivered because over 90% of the highway was blocked.
ERCOT has put such a block on more than a dozen transmission lines across the state. Behind these bottlenecks, electricity, mostly cheap wind and solar power, is essentially trapped.
And that has a cost.
Carrie Bivens is the independent market monitor, a watchdog over ERCOT.
When you have to tell them that they can't generate as much because there's transmission problems, you're losing some of the benefit of those low-cost resources.
On the other side of the bottleneck, Bivens says, power is more scarce, and scarcity in the competitive Texas market drives up prices.
And it's billions of dollars. Last year it was $1.4 billion.
And where do those costs get passed on?
They'll eventually end up in your retail rates.
The consumer.
The consumer.
On some of the electricity highways, the constraint is severe. The one out of the valley is rated to handle 6,000 megawatts. Think 6,000 cars. But ERCOT has cut the megawatt traffic down 90% to to only 650 cars. So we had to ask,
why does ERCOT limit the amount of power that can flow on these lines so much?
We have to manage all of the transmission lines to make sure that we're not overloading any line.
Brad Jones is ERCOT's interim CEO.
Simply similar to if you hook too many Christmas lights together, you're going to have a problem. You'll blow a fuse eventually.
The solution to all of this seems obvious. Build more transmission lines. But that's expensive and can take 6 years, a timetable that can't keep up with new wind and solar farms built in less than 2.
Those two don't quite align.
Not really.
Is that part of the problem?
That's part of the problem.
The other part, says EDF Renewables' Alex Miller, there's been no proactive way to fix it.
Given that everything is kind of reactive in the ERCOT market, the way it's designed, the solutions don't come before the problems. First you have to get a problem, then you can maybe get a solution.
That seems a little bass-backwards.
That's the way it's set up.
The PUC approved a short-term fix to ease congestion in the Rio Grande Valley last month. It will string a second line on some existing transmission towers. A long-term solution is also in the works. That would cost $1.2 billion to build 350 miles of new high-voltage lines.
A possible game changer for solar and wind. Plus, how there may be a new power player in Texas.
Powering Texas with renewable energy. It's not possible all the time. Solar and wind are intermittent, but battery storage could help make them more reliable and turn out to be a game changer.
Texans need greater grid reliability and resilience.
We need a lot of new technologies on the table.
Every day, batteries are getting cheaper and better.
There are many opportunities for storage in Texas.
Mother Nature can make cheap and clean electricity, but she doesn't come with a switch we can control. The sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow.
Battery storage is something that is going to be a game changer.
The changing landscape of the Texas power grid can be seen here in Kaufman County, southeast of Dallas, a 1,400-acre solar farm owned by Enel Energy that not only harnesses the sun's energy, but stores it too.
This plant can deploy energy at any given time of day, not just when the sun is shining.
That's because right next door it's connected to 24 containers, each with about 500 lithium-ion batteries inside.
When they're fully charged, it'll take about an hour and a half to totally discharge all the energy onto the grid.
50 megawatts of electricity, enough to power some 10,000 homes. A boost of juice, says Enel Energy's Clark Bixler, when the grid is running low.
Battery storage can bridge the gap when other generators go down. The battery storage can supply that energy until those generators can come back online.
Just a couple of years ago, there was hardly any battery storage in Texas, about 100 megawatts across the state. By the end of next year, it's projected to approach 3,000.
The cost of storage is coming down dramatically because we all use iPhones, we're starting to drive electric cars. That drives down the cost of batteries.
Michael Skelly is a longtime Texas renewable energy businessman.
That's exactly why you're seeing more storage, is because the cost is really a fraction of what it was just 5 years ago.
And batteries are not only married to wind and solar farms, developers are building so-called standalone storage projects. They buy power directly from the grid when prices are low, then store it and sell it back to the grid when prices are high.
So like the middle of the night, okay, when we're not using that much power, those batteries get charged up, okay? And then during the afternoon hours of say 3 to 6, when electricity demand peaks, they discharge power back into the grid.
The big challenge ahead, how long grid-scale batteries can last. Right now, the storage limit is about 4 to 6 hours. The holy grail in the energy world, developing a battery that can store and discharge power for days.
Still to come, battery power. And Elon Musk, how one of Texas's new residents may not just be trying to take us out of this world. Plus, the biggest urban solar farm being built in Houston, on land that used to be a landfill.
From outer space to self-driving cars, Tesla is making its mark on innovation. Now its founder, Elon Musk, has a new adventure, and it involves becoming a power player in Texas.
He's known for his SpaceX launches and fancy electric cars. But Elon Musk has a new venture in Texas. And he picked Angleton, a small town south of Houston, where in the beginning, folks say what Tesla was building was a bit of a mystery.
We thought it was a subdivision or...
I really don't know that much about it.
No, I ain't never been down there. It looked like they were putting in roads. When I drive, I look and that's it, because they don't want you in there.
What is Tesla doing here, you might ask? Well, the same battery technology they use to power cars, they want to use to power homes. The benefit to being here in Angleton? This right here, a substation that forms a critical entry point to the grid.
When they were actually here building and saw the Tesla vehicles and the Tesla employees eating at the restaurants, that was really cool because we can say Tesla is in our city.
Jason Perez is mayor of Angleton. It's known as the heart of Brazoria County, and the mayor hopes the investment in energy will become the pulse of the community.
What does having Tesla here do for the community?
I think that's also a marketing tool that maybe we can piggyback on, and that's how we're going to get new citizens, is because those are the people you want to come, stay, root, raise a family, be the Little League coaches, the scout moms, and all that.
The projected economic impact, $1 million over 10 years. That's equal to the property tax of 83 homes. But the city's not the only one raking in, says energy expert Ed Hers.
This is a business opportunity for Musk and Tesla.
Hers says Tesla's batteries could be a solution, but they're not the solution, at least not right now.
Well, we're probably 10 years out from having this as a ubiquitous solution for helping balance the grid in a really meaningful capacity.
According to documents filed with the Public Utilities Commission, Tesla is not just applying to be an energy supplier to the grid, but also a retail electric provider, which means, if approved, it could sell power straight to Texas households.
We needed something done about the last power grid thing.
These neighbors just never thought the man taking people to outer space would choose the space in their backyards.
We just got a big old battery behind our house.
Batteries with the Tesla brand, hoping to give the grid a new charge.
We've been talking about how to store the power. Now let's talk about how to generate more renewable energy. Right now, the largest urban solar farm in the country is being built right here in Houston.
I've been here for a while, yes.
There are few people who know Sunnyside like 100-year-old Miss Beatrice Cloud.
The dump was over here.
For nearly 3 decades, she lived in the shadow of a city landfill.
I could stand out in my yard and see the clouds coming out of it. It smelled like old rotten meat and rotten wood. It was horrible. It was just horrible.
It was reality. From 1937 to the mid-70s, Sunnyside was where the city dumped its garbage.
There were humps of trash.
District D Councilmember Carolyn Evans-Shabazz remembers driving by it as a little girl with her dad.
Oh, most certainly an eyesore. I wouldn't think that I would feel very valued if you put a landfill next to my home.
The dump has been shut down for 5 decades. Now just hundreds of acres of overgrown trees and shrubs.
For 50 years, you've got this large contaminated space in your community that has been pulling down your community.
But Mayor Sylvester Turner says that is all about to change.
Sunnyside is ignored no more, okay? They are on the radar.
The former landfill will soon be home to a 240-acre urban solar farm.
There's no better use for
a former landfill than putting solar on it.
Dory Wolf is co-developer of the Sunnyside Solar Project. Sunnyside Energy will lease the former dump site from the city and transform it into a stunning array of solar panels.
Everything's bigger in Texas, right?
The project will make history, all part of the city's climate action plan.
You're talking about the largest urban solar farm in the country.
Tens of thousands of solar panels will line an area the size of 200 football fields and produce enough energy to power 5,000 homes. That means discounted power rates for Sunnyside residents.
The impact is not just felt here locally, the impact would be global in scale.
The city of Houston, known for having one of the highest number of greenhouse gas emitters, suddenly through this solar farm alone, will be able to offset 120 million pounds of CO2 per year.
This would be quite significant, transformative in nature.
But longtime Sunnyside residents are hoping the biggest transformation,
I think it's a good idea,
is seen and felt in their own backyard.
To put it there now indicates that we are bringing that area up with us.
Most significant, building out the solar farm will lead to new job training opportunities and hundreds of new jobs.
Even beyond the solar farm, I can envision the investments that will be taking place around it.
It is a game-changing green project fueling Sunnyside's next chapter. Construction slated to begin before the end of 2022.
A community that has been held down for generations, all of a sudden, is transformed and revitalized, which says that if it can be done here in Sunnyside, it can be done in other communities as well.
There's still a lot of work to do until we see solar panels here at the site of the former dump, but Miss Cloud tells us she's hopeful she'll be here to see it and celebrate Sunnyside's new beginning.
Building a solar farm is one thing, but what it's like to go solar at home, we'll show you when we come back.
Are you ready to go solar? It's a question more people are saying yes to. The process can be overwhelming and expensive, but it doesn't have to be.
I'm super excited. I've seen friends who have gone solar and they posted stories about like, well, you know, my bill's down this much. I've been like, oh, maybe I should look into that. We don't use a ton of electricity, but even keeping it cool for just the two of us, we'll see it run into $250, $300 a month. It'd be nice to look at a June power bill and only see $50 on there.
That's less than you're paying right now in winter.
That's right.
When he learned of the potential savings of converting to solar, Tim Cragans was intrigued, but not sold.
I've always been worried that we've got two big trees, front yard and backyard. I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm a good candidate. I don't know who to talk to, and I don't know if the math checks out, if I'll make my money back.
Cragans said the City of Houston's co-op initiative with Solar United Neighbors and Sunshine Renewable Solutions made his decision easier. Experts educate co-op members who are interested in learning about solar, navigate the process, and they do the bidding for them. Dory Wolf is a coordinator.
And to me, it's like buying a car. You either put down a chunk of change or get a loan. But unlike buying a car, this investment actually pays itself off.
Solar customers have 3 buying options. They can pay for it outright, lease, or finance the panels. So how much does it cost to get solar panels on your home? Sunshine Renewable Solutions says anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000, depending on how much sunlight your house gets, how many panels you have installed, and how you finance it. Wolf says buying options have helped Houston stay competitive with other big cities.
We are growing the fastest as far as incorporating solar into our rooftop.
But Houston still lags behind San Antonio, Austin, and El Paso in terms of residential solar per capita. That's according to a report by the Environment America Research and Policy Center. And when compared to other states across the country, Texas comes in 23rd with just over 300 installations for every 100,000 people.
The meter keeps track of.
Rice University professor of civil and environmental engineering Dan KHOU has been tracking solar trends and policies across the country.
There aren't nearly as much incentives in Texas as some states have provided. North Carolina and California historically provided a lot of incentives for solar. These are on the east.
To get the most bang for your buck, KHOU recommends first making your home more energy efficient by updating insulation, switching to LED lighting, and getting a programmable thermostat.
You're missing out on opportunities to be able to save a lot more money a lot more quickly by doing those efficiency measures. So, people could still make the solar choice, but they're missing out on the low-hanging fruit. They're missing out on the most money-saving opportunities.
But KHOU admits solar is not for everyone.
There are a few reasons why solar wouldn't make sense. One is if your roof is very shaded. If you're renting, you probably don't have a choice of getting panels at all. But even if you buy a home and you think you might be leaving it or selling it within a couple of years, it probably won't pay back in time.
Cragans may be one of the newest people to come online. But he says he's done his homework and now he's eager to see the savings reflected in his bank account.
I think even after a year or so, just being able to look at a full year's worth of lowered bills or non-existent bills, it'll be easy to project from there.
If you're thinking about going solar, our experts say now is the time to do it. Why? The 26% solar investment tax credit drops to 22% in 2023, and it expires in 2024 unless Congress renews it.
Solar not your thing? Too much of a commitment? We'll show you an easier way to buy renewable.
Lots of electricity providers in Texas offer renewable energy plans, but the way they work is a little more complicated than you might think.
On the west side of Houston, on top of this house, you'll find solar panels. Inside the 1,500 square foot home, you'll find a very happy Bobby Marinov.
I am very environmentally conscious, yes.
Which is also why he switched from a traditional electricity plan to a renewable one.
You're not skimping on anything.
No, not at all.
But really, going green at home doesn't have to be a big investment.
You don't have to install or add anything to get renewable power at your house.
No.
Daniel Richmond is with Green Mountain Energy, a provider offering environmentally friendly plans.
So the good thing about Texas is that it's a competitive electricity market. You can choose your provider and you can choose what goes into your plan.
But know this, even with a renewable plan, the electricity fed into your home is the same mix everyone gets from the grid. What you're actually paying for is to have more green energy produced in Texas, along with a guarantee of sorts.
What happens is your electricity company keeps track of where that power comes from and make sure that if they say they're selling you 100% renewable power, it really is.
That mechanism is called Renewable Energy Credit. When you purchase a plan, your provider buys credits equal to the amount of power you use. The alternative energy power plants get those credits when their green energy is added to the grid. The buying and trading of these credits happen at the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, better known as ERCOT. Bobby believes going green sends a message about wanting more renewable energy in Texas.
Were you nervous about getting into it?
Just like anything else, right? When you do it for the first time, there is a little bit of nervousness in there, but you get over that easily.
If you want to check out green electricity plans in your zip code, go to powertochoose.org and scroll down to the renewable energy section.
I did a search for the cheapest option, and it shows a renewable plan is about $0.015 more per kilowatt hour.
It's time for a Sunday drive. We are taking a ride in an electric car around the energy capital.
President Biden wants to make half of all new cars electric by 2030. It comes at a time when a lot of people haven't been in or driven one.
Tiffany Craig is going to take us on a ride to find out what it's like and how a road trip is different when you have to charge up.
All right, here we go on the electric car. You ready?
Ready? Let's do it.
We're going on a drive in an electric car. I think it's cute. This is no out-of-town trip, but roads well traveled by Houstonians. The Grand Parkway, the Beltway, and the 610 Loop. You think we can make it all the way around Houston?
I believe we can at 83% with the air condition on high.
Because we picked the hottest day to do this. Our electric ride is a Kia Niro. It's priced middle of the road for an EV, starting at $39,000, and can get about 240 miles on a charge. It doesn't like stand out and scream, I'm an electric car.
Right.
So how many electric cars are rolling around Texas? More than 36,000 were registered last year. State officials expect that number to climb to 3.3 million in the next 12 years. Are we ready for that? Before our electric road trip, we took a drive with a true believer who thinks we are ready.
Just wait. I remember feeling exactly the same way when I saw the very first iPhones.
Chuck Cruz is sold on EVs. He's from Baytown, an early investor in Tesla, and drives a Model Y. The nearest charging station from home is 10 miles. And for Chuck, it doesn't feel inconvenient for being ahead of the curve.
To use the old analogies, the first folks who were like, okay, my horse can eat grass absolutely anywhere. Now you're telling me I have to go somewhere to fill up a car with gasoline? Similarly, it's learning, okay, there are charging stations, I'm gonna need to go here.
Tesla has its own charging network with superchargers spread across the country.
Typically, we're here about 20 minutes for a charge. I've spent as long as, I wanna say 40, maybe 45 minutes.
Right now, that network is only for Tesla drivers, but that could soon change. In July, Tesla's CEO Elon Musk said in a tweet, "We're making our supercharger network open to other EVs later this year." That would come in handy for us as we start our search for a charging station that the Kia can use. We find one at a public library. Charging feels like filling up, except you have to wait. Depending on what type of station you find, it can take from 45 minutes to more hours than I'd like to wait. It says in order for us to get 100% charge, we have to wait 9 hours and 40 minutes. 9 hours and 40 minutes. Oh, and if you run the air conditioner, it slows the charge down. We cut it short in hopes of finding a faster charger, but there's a problem. It's stuck. I don't want to break it. A few text messages later, we discover a built-in safety mechanism requires you to unlock the car to disconnect the plug. Oh, look. Boom. Done. Whew. Man, I was really sweating that. Having plenty of charging stations is key to the future of EVs. That's why we're talking to Tom Smitty Smith.
I like that car a lot. My wife and I looked at it.
Smitty drives electric and is the executive director of the Texas Electric Transportation Resources Alliance.
What we have today are a lot of charging stations in almost every metro area. And beyond that, it gets kind of thin.
To create a seamless network, Smitty wants the state to build charging stations along every 50 miles of interstate and highway in Texas.
And this is an evolutionary market. We're trying to get things in place before the big boom really begins to hit in about 2025.
Back on the road, we find a faster charging station. While we're charging, let's talk to Dr. Ramanan Krishnamurthy. He's the Chief Energy Officer at the University of Houston. Krishnamurthy says building an electric vehicle leaves a larger carbon footprint than manufacturing a regular one. It's because of the battery. But over time, that flip-flops.
A year and a half out, you've come to the point where those two are equivalent in the amount of environmental harm they do. So anytime after 18 months, my electric vehicle actually benefits the environment.
And then there's the question about where the power comes from at charging stations.
It comes from everywhere, exactly where your household or your workplace gets the electricity from.
Right now in Texas, we get energy from mostly natural gas, along with wind and coal. The rest is nuclear and solar.
As we start to make our grid more and more renewable friendly, we're going to start seeing less and less of a carbon footprint associated with EVs.
And with more car companies getting into the EV market, batteries will get better and go farther before needing a charge. In the end, we had a few bumps in the road, but it was a learning experience and it was fun.
That wraps up our road trip and this hour. Thank you for spending it with us.
We know we shared a lot of information with you in the last hour. If you want to see any of the stories again or missed one, simply head over to our YouTube page.